recommend.
What's up? How's everyone doing? Yeah. Welcome to another MoGraph MoCast. I'm your host, Matt Milstead. Joined with me this week is the super talented, our good friend. You know him. You love him. Mr. Konstantin Eydelman.
Thanks so much. Pleasure being on here
I
today.
said your name correctly, right?
Eydelman.
Yeah. All right.
I always say if you do hey, but take out the
Eydelman.
Eydelman.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun today. We've got a few topics that we're going to go over. We're going to talk to Cons about, some of the stuff that he does up there in Oregon, some of the work that he does. But first off, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to our universal sponsor, Otoy. You know them, you love them. They are the makers of Octane Render and the Render Network. With Octane, you can create super photorealistic renders incredibly fast. And for those renders that need that little extra push of power, the Render Network has you covered. Render Network allows you to render your Octane and Redshift frames in a fraction of the time and a fraction of the cost of other cloud rendering services. The network is also offering render grants. Are you needing some extra cloud rendering for a personal project you're working on? Apply for a Render Network render grant. They're giving away over $50,000 in render credits every month. Check it out at renderfoundation.com/grants and make sure you go to otoy.com and thank them for helping to make our show and website possible. We've got a lot of exciting things coming up for the website. For those who have been following along with who are subscribed to our newsletter, we've been sending them out for the past couple weeks, just kind of letting people know about the new updated website and everything. We're adding a whole social network aspect to it, activity feed, being able to put your demo reel and your projects that you've worked on, as well as meetup groups and stuff like that. So make sure and check it out if you're not already on there. But yeah, super excited. We've got, and on that note, we've got a ton of, updates coming. And, so big thanks to Otoy, for helping us be able to make those possible. So all great things for artists. It's been a big push for us is that, we want to make sure that, we're focusing on the artist and the art first instead of anything else. So, yeah, let's just hop into our first headline and we'll get talking. So, yeah, I'm not sure if anyone saw this, but Adobe's Firefly officially went into subscription, which, if you have used Firefly for some of the generative stuff in Photoshop, Firefly, especially for video, is kind of a big thing with Adobe. And it's something that I've been saying from the very beginning, where I feel like out of all the AI services, Adobe is specifically doing it correctly, because their whole system, the Firefly system, was trained on a data set of licensed videos. So, and I was pretty sure it was probably the videos. I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it's the videos that you had through Adobe Stock and stuff like that. So they were able to, generate their data set based off of that. And so you don't have any brand logos or not suitable for work content. And what's been great is they've actually paid a lot of money in order to license out a lot of these things. So, according to Adobe, you should be able to use Firefly without worrying about legal troubles. So that's good, at least, And I
wonder if they have, because with the image stuff, they have this stuff where they said something like they'll even back you in court.
Yeah, I don't know.
If they're still maintaining
that's interesting. I haven't heard anything negative about Adobe's specific Firefly stuff. I've only heard good things, versus Sora or OpenAI or some of these other ones where it's like, oh look, so, you can see watermarks from companies on here and stuff, but you don't. I haven't heard that with any Adobe stuff. And the way they're doing it makes sense to me. It's like, let's use the stuff that we already have. It would be like if Getty, who owned the rights to a bunch of stuff, were to go ahead and like start training their own AI. I don't know. Interesting stuff.
Right.
The pricing structure for it. There's like a monthly, or it's based off of how many credits you use or something like that, where it's like for $100 a year or $9.99 a month, you'll have just a smaller amount and you can only do so much, versus the yearly or the big dog, it's like $30 a month or $300 a year, and you get like 7,000 credits or something like that. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. So, and then, you've got licensed stuff, but I don't know. How do you feel about it, Cons?
I think like Adobe is always they kind of do it right, even though they kind of tend to do it like kind of
Mm-hmm.
second. You know what I mean? I always wonder like whether certain companies like kind of have the tech, but then are waiting for a competitor to release it to be able to actually like go full throttle on
For
it.
sure.
And I feel like Adobe sometimes does that as well. But obviously, like I think they're trying to push a more quality product,
Yeah.
So they're letting some of those like open source, more experimental, like you know, kind of
Yeah.
standalones, kind of leap ahead, and then kind of show what they have in also with a little bit like of consistency at the forefront,
Yeah.
which kind of helps. I think
Yeah.
so.
I wonder if, they're pushing they're kind of pushing the narrative, you shouldn't have to worry about legal troubles or anything like that. I wonder if that's being pushed because of the backlash they got with the terms of service a few months ago. You know, I don't know. Might be an interesting thing to think about.
It's really interesting to me because the fact that you said like, oh, you get an X amount of
Yeah.
credits, but it's a
Right.
subscription. So it's like gone are the days of like perpetual licensing and
Mm-hmm.
paying for the thing, and now you're on subscription. But now it's almost like, well, it's taking up enough resources that now we're back to like, okay, if you run out of credits, you're going to be left to opening up another membership,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you need
That's
stuff.
super
So it's kind of
frustrating.
a little bit of like it's a little bit of a back and forth, but we'll see like where the future of like subs go even
Yeah.
when AI kind of like gets more pushed into our
Yeah,
industry.
and I put on that headline, I put ethically sourced B-roll and stuff like that. But like that's also, just for the licensing stuff. There is still the environmental impact that all this AI stuff has with it, where it's like, how much energy are we creating by making this so mainstream? Especially for video, you need a lot more. I would assume you would need a lot more GPU power and stuff like that, versus just images or text or something.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with how this whole like DeepSeek thing
Yeah.
pans out, how like they were able to like, supposedly with so much less power and like, such a smaller
Mm-hmm.
team, compete with like ChatGPT or
Yeah.
whatever, which, has definitely has some
But weren't
hesitation
you
in
saying
my
you were just telling me that they were just training it on ChatGPT, right?
right. We'll see where that pans out. But I was going to say, if it is true that it's like significantly less like power that it takes to train up these models in the future, which I think that'll be the case
Mm-hmm.
regardless. But I wonder, back to the point that I was saying earlier, you know, how much when ChatGPT launched their like or OpenAI launched their $200 a month price
Two
point.
hundred a
I
month?
wonder if they
Jeez, I didn't even know about that.
I think it's 200 a month if you want like the unlimited or
That's crazy.
whatever. But anyway, that's their like
Mm-hmm.
pro. And I wonder even when they made that move, like in the business mindset, they're like, this is the value to the customer,
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if they already had something, I wonder if they already had some of these like similar not like similar ideas as DeepSeek, but I wonder if they already knew that like they're trying to assert a certain value
Hmm.
proposition for their customers, but maybe they already see the future that it's going to be a lot cheaper. They're just trying to like keep the value up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And obviously, it's going to be a little bit of like a race to the bottom between these companies to try to like win over
Yeah.
customers. And some of them are going to try to push it for free as long as they can, whether it's through like selling your data or like
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff,
But I mean, even
Uh,
offering up for free, you're gonna have to like it's like mining Bitcoin or something, where it's like, what's the price to payback ratio or something? Like, sure, we can offer these you know uh, uh, generative AI services and stuff like that, but we still got to pay for the power. you know it's like what's the price point there? But yeah, you're right. It's like, okay, so maybe they're selling your data, which of course they are. Everyone's selling your data, you know
well,
except
if it's free,
mograph.com. We don't sell your data, so it's important
yeah,
to note.
MoGraph is about the MoGraph.com is about the
It is.
community, but otherwise, if something's free, the way my dad's always said, only thing's free is cheese in a
Yeah.
mousetrap. So you gotta look twice at those free
Yeah,
things, you know.
that's funny. um let's see, one of the other headlines we got, new render network updates and stuff. Blender cycles is coming soon, which is really exciting for all those Blender users out there. There was a really good video put out by Andre Lebrov and Dino from the Otoy team. We're talking about all these different updates that the render network has and are releasing. For those who don't know, Dino's pretty much he's a big part of the render network and its updates, and making sure that everything is working fluidly and stuff. Super great guy. Got to meet him while we were in Berlin for the DAT show, and yeah, so I recommend going and checking out this video. It's really cool. They talk about how a bunch of the new updates, such as Blender Cycles, it's currently in a closed beta, so that should be coming soon. He teased maybe Arnold as well, which I think would be great, especially for GPU stuff, because from what I've messed with in Arnold, the GPU stuff is still relatively slow. But then other things, you've got the C4D render uploader, so you don't have to specifically, if you're working in C4D in Octane files, you can send it to the network directly from C4D, which is awesome. And then the download manager, this is a really cool thing. So being able to download all your files and stuff in just a unified app, and I believe uploading as well. But the biggest thing is, with the download manager, there's this thing called differential uploader. So when you're using this, it allows you to basically, it's hard to explain, but it's really cool when you understand it. Basically, so if you're creating, if say you're in Houdini and you create like a VDB and you upload that VDB into the render network, and then you're working on a project that's referencing that has that same VDB in its project, you don't have to re-upload that VDB. It will check to see if those files, like say you've used a bunch of, Megascans assets or something like that, it doesn't need to recheck for those assets because they're already uploaded, so you upload a whole lot less. And I personally think that's a really cool thing, especially for Houdini users. I've found that, like, once you start working with these massive scenes and like VDBs and other things in Houdini, especially, it's like your scene scale massively inflates, and then sending it to a render farm becomes the big bottleneck, especially if you've got a lower megabit upload and stuff like that. It's like uploading 100 gigs could be detrimental, and then you wouldn't be able to even use it. But being able to upload some of these assets ahead of time is great, because then it's like, okay, I'm referencing the assets in my project. It's already uploaded, let's go ahead and skip that part of it, which is pretty cool. And so say, for example, also you made some updates to the project or whatever, you rendered it out, client came back, they're like, let's change, some of these assets or some of these little parameters. Once you update those and then send them to the cloud, it's like, oh, well, all the assets are already there. I'm just updating basically the project file, which is really cool. I can see that being a really, really awesome thing for Houdini users.
Yeah, I haven't used the render network. I've used their like old one, like the
The
orc or
orc, yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I wonder with that thing that you're saying, do you have to like manage the project on there, or like is it more just a like kind of automated kind of
As
like
far as I understand it, it's more of an automated thing, which is pretty cool. It's like, okay, so, I've exported some VDBs either from, Houdini, or I've exported them from C4D and I'm reusing them. Or there's been a few times where it's like, okay, well, I've got 3 different scenes, I've got 3 different takes, and I'm pretty sure the render network does takes now. But still, even if you've got them as 3 separate projects, but you're reusing the whole same scene and the whole same thing, being able to upload those and not have to re-reference those VDBs or any of the external files is pretty killer.
right? Yeah, I always kind of wondered about that because just on my like local network
Mm-hmm.
farm, noticed like, oh, should I cache the sim to be able to have it, hit that first pixel,
Right.
or is it take more time to process the data, upload or whatever?
Right.
I mean, when I is local, it's fine, but sometimes I'm offloading things to like different drives or
Yeah, for
whatever.
sure. The one thing that I wasn't sure about it was I think you need to be able to bring it into the Octane standalone. And so if Octane, because then you have to export to Orbix first and then open it in standalone and then do the differential uploader, which is specifically in that. But still, it's a good workflow, I think.
That was like back in the day. I remember it used to be faster to open it in standalone and render
Yeah, yeah,
regardless.
yeah,
Yeah. And especially if you were on Windows 7 still,
yeah. Yeah, right.
or running
That's
Linux.
funny. But yeah, I'm also really excited about the Blender Cycle stuff. They've always been pushing Octane in Blender a lot. For those Blender users, you have like basically free access to Octane off of like one GPU, I believe, in Blender, and it works really well. I've tried it out. But I know there's a lot of Blender users who like to stick with the default system, and it's cool that they're adding cycles in there. You know.
Yeah, I wonder if that's going to be at all compatible with Cycles 4D,
I don't
because I
know.
know like 'cause they were saying, I recall they were saying how like Arnold and Redshift shaders should be able to render out of Octane in the
Mm-hmm.
future. So it'd be cool to also, if they're already attacking cycles on the Blender side, I wonder how hard it is to get Cycles 4D to work
Yeah.
with.
That's a good question. I don't know, but I mean, I love the Insidium team, but is anyone using Cycles 4D?
It's really a shame that not many people
Mm-hmm.
are, because even in the like early days of the render wars when it was like
Yeah.
Octane, Redshift, whatever, um, a lot of us had X particles, and it was like $100 more just to get
Yeah.
Cycles 4D or whatever. And like so many times it was like features that like, 1 month Redshift would come out with a feature, and then the next month Octane would like match
Yeah.
it and back and forth. Meanwhile, Cycles had so many of them, like out the gate, like way
Yeah.
before, but yeah, not many people were using it. It wasn't quite as fast on the GPU side, but the other added benefit back before everybody was switched over to GPU is Cycles from the get-go had OpenGL or CPU or GPU.
Oh, that's
Like you had the
right. Yeah.
option to pick whatever. So
Yeah. Also, like the X particles integration was just like second to none. It
right.
was the render engine you wanted to go to if you were using X particles.
They had things like similar to like vector displacement before. I think they still have this feature that like is similar to like a
Mm-hmm.
bool or like a vector displacement, but you could displace things on a mesh, but it also, instead of just one axis, it goes
Right.
into the
Right.
holes
Right. Right.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So, but they had that like ever since I've like touched it. But like I said, I haven't played with it too much because, you
Yeah.
know, eventually you're like, well, what am I
What do
training for?
you what do you what are you typically rendering in? Are you a Redshift or an Octane or V-Ray guy?
uh, viewport, viewport
Really?
render. No,
Oh,
no.
I was gonna
Well,
say. I mean, I wouldn't be
honestly,
surprised.
I do what works, and we could get back to that. There's certain
Mm-hmm.
projects where I specifically use viewport. You know, it's not for like high-end client
Sure.
stuff, uh, no, I mean, I started in regular C4D, you know, trying physical,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And then I think like when I was in school, I was like, oh, this Beeple guy is using this
Yeah.
Octane stuff. And then later on one of my first jobs, the I found the machine that was like my workstation. I was like, here's your
Mm-hmm.
workstation, get to work. And I was like, oh, you guys have that Octane
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's like, this is what Beeple
Yeah.
uses. And so yeah, so I kind of went all in, and I even like found you guys initially when I was like, "What the fuck is happening here?" Uh,
Us making
uh,
Hackintoshes, you know, or hacked Macs cut out the side in order to, yeah.
well, I realized the power of it like right away. I was like, "Oh my god, this is why you know when I'm watching people do his thing, he has so much like creative
Yeah.
freedom in 3D because of Octane,
Mm-hmm.
you know." And like right away, I was like, okay, I not only need to learn this, but I need to like mimic this system at home, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, in order to do that, I started like looking around, like, okay, my IT guy built this thing. Like, I started asking him, like, how could I get something like this at home? Started looking around, found your guys' channel. Dave was like switching the
Mm-hmm.
Mac to C, or I think he was kind of in that process of like trying
Yeah.
to
We had our
stuff.
what was it, 980 Ti's. We had our two 980 Ti's, each to a different each to a different power supply. So
Yeah.
ridiculous. That was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was early days of MoGraph. So,
The,
but so
the
you're currently using, you're in Octane. You stuck in Octane, or are you working in both now?
I do them both, and I mean, honestly, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
tinker by nature.
Same.
So I just like trying and playing around and like seeing how different things are made or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But yeah, no, I was like very. It was just Octane was so much easier because I knew it for
Yeah.
so long, and then a few years ago when I did like a 2 year stretch with Wyden Kennedy, they were using Redshift, and I already owned it, and I'd used it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit here and there, and I'd already used cycles a
Yeah.
little bit here and there. So I was like, all right, well, the team is using Redshift. I'm going to use Redshift. And honestly, it was like, it's not very hard to switch nowadays because, like I said, they kind of matched features. The render settings would be like the hardest
Yeah.
thing, I would say.
Yeah.
Nowadays, like in Redshift, like I wish I knew more of the like old school render settings, but every time I talk to somebody that used it, like back then, and I look at their like presets, render
Mm-hmm.
presets, I'm like, okay, let's compare it to the automatic slider, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
at point zero
Yeah.
0.01, and like I can't find anybody's render settings that beat the automatic slider. In very
The
few
automatic
instances,
sampling,
like
is that what you're saying?
the automatic,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. If you just do
Well,
advanced,
yeah,
but you
because
do
you're setting
automatic
basically a
slider.
noise threshold. You know, it's
But for time as
yeah.
well, you know what I mean. So I'm about because yeah, I'm trying to weigh it out fairly, you know what I mean. There's been like minor, or there's been like a couple instances where it was like pure like VDB
Yeah.
scene where I had to ping somebody and they like came back to me like, oh, like they pinged somebody else that had that specific
Mm-hmm.
issue, and I got a set of render settings that was like totally different. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
When I
yeah.
looked into some of those more complex advanced settings, I was like, oh, okay, this person definitely knew what they were
Yeah.
doing, but it was specifically geared toward like VDBs only. And it was like, instead of a minute,
Yeah.
you get it down to 10 seconds, you know? So in that case was the only time that I seen the custom settings beat the
Yeah.
automatic
I've
sampling.
seen Billy Chitkin Gurnge. He has a really good tutorial on like speeding up some of your Redshift renders. It's a really good
Mhm.
tutorial. I watched it while I was in Redshift trying to speed up some of my stuff without using the automatic sampling. The automatic sample, automatic the detriment to automatic sampling is, I think, VDBs. You know, if you're dealing with VDBs and atmosphere and stuff like that, it's like gonna jack up the time because you're trying to hit that specific noise threshold, and it's just gonna keep crunching away until it hits that. You know, I wish there was well, there is, you know, with the minimum and maximum samples, but I really like the way Octane does it, where it's like, I'm gonna throw basically a billion samples, you know, and then read this area if everything's within this noise threshold with the adaptive sampling, you know, it's like, all right, just move on, you know,
Right.
because it's like you'll do 16,000 samples, then it's like, oh, it's gonna take an hour, and it's like, oh no, and it's slowly just like crunching down to like a minute, you know, so
Right. It really seems like the both of those renders are like built like almost literally opposite from
yeah,
each other in terms of the render settings. And the render settings is the most complicated part of both
mm-hmm.
of them because, like I said, I think at this point it's like if you know how to use like the material editor on
Mm-hmm.
one, you can easily just jump into the other. You know, there's a couple hidden buttons. You know,
Yeah.
um, but in terms of like the actual render settings, it almost seems like Octane is more about like how much light are we pushing into the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Redshift render settings are more about like how much light are we receiving into the camera.
Oh yeah. I mean,
You
it's
know,
the
it's
difference
a little
between
like that.
a biased and unbiased render, right? Isn't that basically the gist of it? I think. I
That's
don't
just
know.
what that's just how I see it in
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
mind's eye after.
Yeah.
But I think like Redshift does typically like it kind of does better with
Oh
volumes,
yeah.
but yeah, it like it's like better but takes longer, but then it's like you could kind of do it
Yeah.
faster. I
Unless
don't
you're
know. It's
using some of
weird.
those post processing volumes or whatever in the newer Octane stuff, like the light volumes, the I can't remember what it's called, the analytic lights or something, where it's actually producing the volume after the fact. That's chef's kiss. That's super nice. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I used that at the death
Oh
match
yeah.
for one of my winning
Yeah.
scenes, and then I got totally. I was like, all right, I learned a new feature in 15 minutes and
Right.
won. I was like, and then the next round, I was like, I'm gonna learn analytic lights
That's
now,
funny.
and
It's the
I
best way to
totally
do it.
failed.
That's the best way to do it, right?
Yeah, did it in the moment.
That's funny.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
talk to
because
me. You mentioned Wyden Kennedy. You did a 2 year stint there.
yeah, it was actually it was like a 2 month
It
contract.
was a 2 month
Uh,
contract.
yeah, it was a two
Okay.
month contract, and yeah, for this project, it was awesome. I worked on a project with David
Mm-hmm.
Malore, Lomograph. And then, yeah, as it was like wrapping up, I think, I was in there like meetings in the morning and then saw some things swirling around, popping up. And I'm typically I'm typically bad with like idle hands.
Sure.
So I'll just raise my hand and be like, oh, who else needs help with something? And so it's like, that kind of honestly just kept the ball
Yeah.
rolling. And I think it was just easy for them to be like, oh, okay, you're doing cool work. We have more stuff to toss
Yeah.
you. Uh, it was like coming out of the pandemic. I think they had to like do some restructuring and like the first thing they did was like let go of all freelancers, and I was
Mm,
technically like permalance at that
gotcha.
point. But it was good to be able to like move on and like keep pushing stuff. It was interesting because pre-pandemic I was in the Bay
Mm-hmm.
Area, and then uh, I moved to Southern Oregon, thinking like, oh, I'm gonna kickstart my freelance career. I left like a 5 year like in-house
Yeah.
job, like a small media department that I pretty much developed at this kind of like large
Mm-hmm.
company, and was like, all right, I'm gonna kickstart this. It's gonna be a little bit like cheaper cost of living. That way, if I have those down times, I don't have to worry as much,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll have to like learn how to like work by
Yeah.
myself, you know, all this like motivation, like all this other
Yeah.
stuff, you know. And sure enough, a year goes by, and I'm like, all right, I need to start hitting up like
Yeah.
conferences. I kind of kicked my, built out my like render nodes, whatever. And then the pandemic hits, and all of a sudden I was thinking like I was going to be like traveling from the middle of nowhere to kind of like, be,
Mm-hmm.
visible. Uh, but all of a sudden, like work started popping up, and it was specifically kind of like the same thing over and over. It seemed where it was like, uh, we need somebody with render power and somebody that can do things kind of like on their own remotely
Yeah.
because it seems like I have no other
Yeah.
choice. They're
The
telling us
pandemic was
in two
huge for
weeks.
remote workers.
Right, and it was in the first month, right? They were like, in 2 weeks we'll go back to
Yeah.
regular life, right? But yeah, real quick, I was like, okay, this works for me. I mean, I I wish the pandemic did not happen,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was very weird how like for certain people they were kind of like in the right place in the right
Mm-hmm.
time. But yeah, at that time, I think I had a friend that was doing some producing at Wyden, and then he brought me on board there. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Honestly, Wyden Kennedy was
How
amazing.
how how
It's
big are they? They're massive, right?
like for advertising, it's kind of crazy. I just don't like personally, I don't know how to like even compare them to anything
Yeah.
else because they've been around for like 40
Mm-hmm.
years. They have like 15 shops around the
Oh wow.
world. Like they started with Nike, right? It was like the partnership was like uh, we're this brand of shoes that's trying to like look different and push
Yeah.
something new in the world and show athleticism and stuff. And then Wyden Kennedy was sort of like two guys that came out of like old ad marketing kind of
Mm-hmm.
places and came and started Wyden Kennedy, uh, uh, Dan Wyden, David
Yeah.
Kennedy, and they were like, we're gonna like shift gears here, and they partnered up with Nike to basically like push all of those original. Well, they came up with Just Do
Mm-hmm.
It, but they had all those like the photographic kind of like really authentic kind of like imagery and like really push Nike as a brand like where it is. And I you know, my inclination is that they kind of grew together
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
I mean, Nike literally has different. They have to treat their different global, demographics differently. I
Yeah.
think that's a strength to be able to service a brand like that around the world as
Mm-hmm.
well. Uh, and I mean that when I was there, it's like every now and then there'd be a Nike thing, but they've come a long way from that or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and like I wasn't full time there, but it was really cool seeing like at some events they would have like some of these like historical and archival kind of like things of the founders like talking about why they kind of like made the company and like how the company
Mm-hmm.
works in a sense. Hopefully, it's not too much of the secret sauce, but I like their mascot is or mascot. They're kind of like spirit
Uh-huh.
animal is slime mold.
Okay.
Uh, and yeah, that like yellow stuff that identified the like perfect railways in Japan or whatever. You seen that
Okay. Yeah.
experiment?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, and the slime mold basically it's like when it sees a source of
Yeah.
food or
Yeah. Yeah.
success, it kind of like one little cell kind of goes that way and says, "Hey, there's something good here," and all of a sudden everybody turns around and says like, "Hey, there's no central kind of leadership here. Let's just go this
Yeah.
way. This kind of seems to be
Yeah.
working." You know what I mean? So it's like Wyden Kennedy kind of has that, and even though it's like this big, huge company, it's still they still have a lot of that at the
Mm-hmm.
core. Even like the way they structure their teams are based on like the brands they
Yeah.
service. So you could really see like if one brand pops off, like that's where the company's gonna
Yeah.
go.
I
Uh,
know they've done a
but
lot of work. They did a lot of work for KFC, and a lot of weird work for KFC, like working with smear balls and stuff like that on some of the weirdest stuff that I've seen, you know. And that's where I initially heard of Wyden Kennedy, because I'm not big, and you know, I don't know the advertising world that much, you know. I'm more in the MoGraph community, and it's like, oh yeah, I was doing work with Wyden Kennedy. That was what, you know, smear balls would tell us. And it's like,
Right.
it's cool stuff. It's
So
funny, and they're
that's
like not afraid to, like, you know, be weird and push things and stuff like that, which I liked.
100%. So yeah, I mean, like when I got invited to the first part, I mean, well, the first job I did with Malore, it was like, can you like we have something weird kind of. Can you like you want to try this thing that's kind of
Uh,
weird? I was like weird. Like
yeah,
tell me
tell
more,
me
you know.
more.
Uh, I animated like a like we animated like a hand with like a sixth finger coming
Uh-huh.
out with like an eye and stuff. And I was like, this is legit. Like so much stuff that I'd done before is kind of like tech
Mm-hmm.
explainer kind of stuff, you know, which is fine. I love like kind of like the tinkering aspect of things. But I was like, give me more of this weird shit. You know what I mean? Especially after like the ball was
Yeah.
rolling, and I was like, this is the stuff that I'll burn the
Yep.
midnight oil
Yeah.
for.
The same thing happened with me. Smearballs introduced me to there was a show called Mostly for Millennials. You know, it was oh, what's his name? I forget. The people. Mostly for, hold on, let me look it up. Mostly for Millennials is a comedy series on Adult Swim. Derek Beckles, you know, and he. So, anyways, I was doing a Thomas the Vape Engine, you know, like Smearballs just didn't. He was able to get the Thomas the Vape Engine like character, but they needed Thomas the Vape Engine like tracked into the scene, and it was one of the best like conversations or whatever I had ever had with someone, where it's like, yes, Thomas needs a bit more pustules on his face, you know? And can you make the tongue licking like super suggestive? And it's like, yes, this is what I love. Yes, let me do this. You know?
It's like it almost seems like not like corporate talk,
Yeah.
but like still like business talk about the like silliest possible
Right?
things. And yes, it's where it's like yeah, widen it like really felt like I'd been in places in like San Francisco where like I felt that energy. But yeah, Portland's kind of like known for that.
Yeah, I was gonna
Uh,
say, like, because
there,
in Portland specifically, I lived there for about a year, you know, and like they had the whole keep Portland weird, and I'll tell you, it was weird. It was weird when I lived there. You know, it's a bit more gentrified now, but like, you know, thanks to Portlandia. But yeah, I would assume that the stuff coming out of the agencies there are just weird and great.
Yeah, so Wyden Kennedy, the Portland office is actually like a 4 or 5 story
Mm-hmm.
building. Like literally the building is like a piece of like magnificent designed
Mm-hmm.
architecture. But also you could like get lost in it. It's kind of like this like brutalist kind of concrete slab and wood kind of thing, you
Uh-huh.
know. And like, every corner of the building kind of looks the same. And you're like, where the fuck
Yeah.
am I? But there was a Portlandia episode about getting an interview at Wyden
Uh-huh.
Kennedy, and it was like the interviewee comes in and they're like, oh, so you get to pick out your frisbee, and they're like, what? And then they're like getting like and then they get lost in different places. There's all sorts of different tropes about the actual place. They're like the meeting room, the top head
Uh-huh.
meeting room at the top floor is literally like a nest,
Oh,
like
yes, I
out
remember that one.
with
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. In the Portlandia episode, they're like, all right, let's go to the meeting, and they get in the nest, and then they show this like panned out shot, and it's a hot air balloon that goes up and away.
yeah. That's so
It's
funny.
really good.
That's so
Uh,
funny.
but yeah, no, so you know, it was like a really cool company, and so it's a little bit weird when I hear like a little bit of like fleck coming from motion
Mm-hmm.
design uh, industry from different people sometimes about like, oh, Wyden Kennedy, it's like a big enough name, when anything gets big
Mm-hmm.
enough, you like, you know, people can criticize or
Sure.
whatever. But yeah, in terms of like the wholesomeness and where it came from, and in terms of like what they stand
Mm-hmm.
for, it's insane to me that they exist and have so much freaking fun
Yeah.
doing it. Like the when I got invited to the parties, I don't even know how much of this stuff I was talking about here. But no, it's like it was insane. We had like a guest DJ one time, and then it turned out to be Snoop
Oh, that's
Dogg, and
amazing.
there's like girls walking around like handing out like joints and like mushroom chocolates and stuff, and I'm like, where am
Yeah.
I?
That's hilarious.
Uh, but yeah, so it was definitely cool, definitely weird, definitely fun. Definitely aligned with a lot of like kind of what I wanted to be doing. But when I'd finished up there, it was like, I remember like even back in school, I had a teacher that was like, it was one of our kind of like last classes, kind of like getting more ready for like professional world or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And she was like, I have this like, she was like, I have this she was like, I have this advice, which is when you go out there, tour these different companies, don't stay at any place more than a year.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And she was like, yeah, because I'm at the same place for 11 years and I don't know what to do if they fire
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, that's fair. But yeah, I mean, I think like I've always had a little bit of that in terms of like, I want to know like, well, what's next? I want to always like expand and like
Mm-hmm.
push. But not like I don't think Wyden Kennedy has like a plateau element, but in a way, I felt like I was like, okay, this is really freaking cool experience. I was like, what's next for me? Like not by choice, but I was like, okay, where does like freelance go
Yeah.
now? You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, that's why I wanted to. That's why I was like, it seems like it's hard to go up from here. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? In terms of like, there's like a global ad agency that also services
For
motion, and
sure.
I'm like, where do I go up from here? So that's where I was like, kind of been trying to strategize more over the last like few years, like to get my own clients and stuff. Still networking with a lot of agencies and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, um, but yeah, been slowly, getting better and better at it. I like to say trying to do more Chris Doe instead of Chris Schmidt lately.
I like that. I like that. That's funny. That's a very niche joke. If I was
Oh
to
yeah,
tell my
oh
wife
yeah.
that joke, she would not get that. She would understand who Chris Schmidt is, but she wouldn't get the rest of it. That's funny. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like, yeah, Chris does. He has like a lot of insight into things that like, they're almost like obvious before we got into the
Mm-hmm.
industry. And then we got into the industry and we did so many tutorials that we kind of like forget the other element of
Right.
like,
Right. How to
like
run a
what it is
business versus actually doing the business, or yeah.
to survive in the world while doing this others,
Yeah.
while doing the thing you love or whatever.
Yeah. I like that idea.
But yeah.
I'm gonna hit the last headline and then we'll hop back over to you because I got a lot more questions and fun
Yeah.
stuff that we can chat about. Just get this out of the way. MoGraph groups, like I was mentioning at the beginning of the show, we've got 22 groups now, which is pretty great, and they're all over the world, which is just fantastic. We've probably got half of those in Europe and then the other half in the United States. So we just added some in Munich, Bulgaria, Orlando, and then there's one in India as well that was just added today. So if you have a meetup group or if you're looking to join one, go on the mograph.com/groups, look around, see if you can find one of the meetup groups. If not, go ahead and start one. Also, if you have a meetup group and you need some financial help for sponsorships or something like that, hit us up. We'd love to chat. info@mograph.com. But yeah, go online and check that out. We'll go back to here. We'll come back to you, Cons.
Yeah, no, actually, I have a
Yeah,
question about that because my MoGraph meetup is featured in there.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's the Southern Oregon Media
Mm-hmm.
Meetup. But yeah, I mean, it kind of came out of it came out of like going to different conferences, like being a freelancer, like trying, especially being kind of more
Yeah.
remote, and not in like a large city or metropolitan area. Um, but yeah, finding a lot of value in like going to these meetups, going to NAB last year. I think literally on the plane ride back, I was like, I'm going to all these places. I feel like I bet I bet there's some people close to me that I could meet up
Yeah.
with. Like if I raise my flag, maybe people will
How
reply.
how far
And
away
so
from like Eugene or Portland are you?
Eugene's like 2.5 hours. Portland's like four and a
How far
half,
away from San Francisco are you?
like
Okay.
five and a
So
half.
yeah, you're like right in
Yeah,
the middle of
I'm right in the
Yeah.
middle. Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty much on the
Yeah.
border of California. I say Southern Oregon. Yeah, because if I say Oregon, people are like
Yeah.
Portland, and that's like literally a state
Right.
away because
Cuz it's
Portland's
right at the
right in
top.
Washington. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I don't know if you noticed, I say tuning in from Southern Oregon because literally nobody
Right.
else is gonna say that. But yeah, gotta represent. It's the party of one. No, but I actually went on Monday meeting. Shout out to Monday
Hmm.
meeting. Actually, I've been assigned to be kind of a community rep.
Cool.
So yes, big shout out to
Yep.
Monday meeting. Come join us on the
Doing
podcast
your
on Mondays.
community rep
Uh,
job right now. Yep.
right, exactly.
For
There we
those
go.
who are
Uh,
wondering what Monday meeting is, give us a little plug and where they can find them.
yeah,
Hmm.
mondaymeeting.org. Every Monday we meet up. Pacific time is 8 a.m., 8 to 9.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's like a big Zoom call for designers and industry leads from kind of all over the world. I say my time zone because I can't cover all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really cool because sometimes it's an open discussion. Like yesterday, we had Donovan Brutus uh, kind of doing a little. We kept mentioning him time to time about his workshop from Camp
Yeah.
MoGraph. So he came on and did kind of like a little mini version
Oh,
of
cool.
that, which was cool. Um, and yeah, usually just a place to discuss. For me, it's like I found huge value in it from being a remote worker and like waking up on Monday and like feeling like I'm not alone in the
Yeah.
world and there's people doing this
Yeah.
thing at the same time. We're all waking up today and getting ready for the week. But yeah, it's also cool just to discuss like whatever you want. That like-minded people are opening their ears and willing to kind of lend some advice when
Yeah.
needed. Uh, Lost my train of thought after
Groups. Yeah.
so yeah, with the community thing, we had one episode where shortly after I talked to Jen. She was running it at that point and she had just taken over for Mark.
Hmm.
um, and and I was like, I kind of want to start my own community as well after NAB. She had went to NAB as well. And Vernon, I was talking to him. He had taken over a while ago. Fishy Frames or Fishy Frames is their event.
Yeah.
Their meetup is called
Hold on.
Music City
Music
MoGraph.
City Mograph. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is
in
also a
Tennessee
group
there.
on mograph.com. Yeah.
Nashville. Yep, exactly. So we did a Monday meeting episode where I kind of interviewed them how to start a meetup
Cool.
group. So go ahead and listen to that one. I can't give you the episode number, but if you search it, I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to
Hmm.
find. But yeah, that one was really like good for me because I kind of figured like there'd be some stuff I'd learn. One of the biggest takeaways was Vernon was like, if I had done it again, maybe I wouldn't have called it MoGraph, Music City MoGraph. He was like, maybe I would have called it something a little bit more
Hmm.
broader. And I was like, oh, that's like a really interesting point because I know that like I'm in the middle of nowhere, and in order to kind of widen the
Yeah.
reach, I took that advice to heart. So that's why I did Southern Oregon Media Meetup,
Yeah.
and sure enough, like I'm able to kind of like just talk to like artists You
Yeah.
know, not even behind the computer. Like we have a welder that comes
That's
sometimes,
cool.
and like, you know, we're like showing sometimes like some sketches. I remember one time it was kind of interesting. Like there was another designer and my welder friend, and he was like, oh, I could share like some sketches today. And he pulled out these sketches. He's like building like a dirt bike
Mhm.
rack for a car for like a tow hitch or
Mhm.
whatever. And we're like looking over. I'm like, these are really neat. I was like, dang, yeah, this is like really precise. And then the other designer friend was like, wait, these aren't from a computer? And he was like, oh yeah, no, I just, I drafted them. And so it's like it's actually really
Yeah.
interesting to have that kind of like even bigger, kind of like wider gamut to get more creative people together. But yeah, for me, it was sort of a necessity. And like for me, it's also like, I'm bringing motion graphics to the table.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting as well because I'm right away the leader in that field. You
For
know what I
sure.
mean? So far for my presentations, I've done like here's like a breakdown of how I built the brand and stuff. So actually, I don't know if you want to pull it up. We have an Instagram,
Yeah.
um,
Which one is it?
or or here you can go on our website. So it's sommeetup.com, but SOMM. And I know what you're gonna say, but do that one
Okay,
instead.
that's funny. Because it's
Um,
funny that you say that and you say, yeah, I know what you're going to say. Because when I saw that I was like, School of Motion has a meetup? Let's see. All right.
and I made it like so fast, and I literally like on a napkin sketch, just kind of like I was like, this is gonna be it. Oh, there's my animation.
Mm-hmm.
So I made like a
That's
little
cool.
like, and that's just like two people meeting up, right? So
Uh-huh.
one in the M's are the little jackets and stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so I made that, and I made the font, and I was like, I'm gonna keep it super meta. Literally, one of the first meetings after I got like a few people to join, I was like, here's how I built a brand. Did a little rundown, did some topography, a little bit of animation, And so since then, it's been like, sometimes we're just shooting the shit, grabbing some food.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like if I've done like a projection mapping project or something, and I'm like, oh, check out what I did, guys, or somebody else is like, oh, here's what I did. So it's really cool. I think like, I kept hearing like Mark say like, oh, start a, or maybe it was one of you guys, but it's like there's no reason not to start a meetup. A meetup only has,
Yeah.
a minimum of two people to have a
Yep.
meetup. And I was like, what? Yeah, why don't I do
Yeah.
that? And everything starts with something. Um, Lately, I've been a little busy,
That's good.
so missed the last one, but yeah, the one this week will do. Um, but yeah, I think like
Is it a
I've
consistent
had
date that you're doing the meetups?
yeah, it's every first and third Thursdays,
Wow.
um, two times a month. So it's like every other week, but it's for like an hour and a half,
That's cool.
and it's more. Yeah, is that too much?
I mean, it's a fair amount, you know. Like I'm lucky if me and Dave could get DFW while we were doing it, we'd do it like maybe once every 6 months or something, you know. But ours was like a big ordeal. We'd have like presentations and we'd fly people in and stuff like that. You know, we'd have 50 or 60 people. So,
Yeah, and I've talked around like some of the places because I do want it to
mhm.
grow, and like I do have some ideas for it, and it would be cool to like get it to a point where it'd be worthwhile to like have somebody come in and do a little presentation, and to bring somebody in, like come stay at my
Yeah.
pad, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and come check out Southern Oregon, but also like do the meetup and like meet some of my friends, show what you've been up to. Um, but yeah, it's been cool. I've talked to some places and they're like, oh, once you have 30 people, we literally have a room for you. There's a
That's
projector.
cool.
I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, so that's something to look towards as something that I could potentially
Yeah,
do.
that was one
Yeah,
thing
right.
that Dave and I found initially. We found this one place and it was okay, but we found this other place and that's where we ended up. And it was great because they had projectors, they had TV screens all around, you know, we had pool tables and everything, and it fit lots of people in there. So we were able to do these really cool presentations, and then COVID happened and that company shut down. The restaurant shut down, which sucked. So it's like I would love to do more local meetup stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, having the people, I started like a little Discord
Yeah.
server, and like I'd never seen a Discord server. I was like, okay, what else do I have to
Yeah.
do? Um, but yeah, and initially, and even now, it's like when it comes, Thursday morning, I'm like, all right, here's my like roll call. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So you could tell it's like you have to keep pushing the snowball till it starts rolling itself.
Hmm.
But yeah, in the last like few months, I've had like a lot of life things I've had to
Sure.
take care of. So, but yeah, I'm definitely trying to kick that project. Uh,
And
put a lot of put a lot of energy
how's
towards it
the
this year.
industry in Southern Oregon? Like, are you getting a lot of motion or any motion designers, or is it all just, eccentric artists and stuff?
Oh, at the meetups,
Yeah.
you're saying? Yeah, it's interesting. I have there's a couple people that are that are
Hmm.
motion designers. I don't know if they would like specifically consider. One guy is specifically like I've been doing design for a while. He's working for this company in Jackson
Hmm.
Hole called Noso. It was really really cool actually. He like showed us some of his workflows and everything. They make patches for snow gear
Cool.
and just like Patagonia
Yeah.
jackets or whatever, instead of sewing them, they're called no sew. You just stick them on,
Ah.
but they're like a fabric material, and they have like a lot of a big part of their business is like their media and branding and
Hmm.
stuff, right? So he does a lot of like layouts and like some designs for them, and he kind of works remotely for them because they're in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so he's been doing some motion for them, and he actually did ski school with me this
Oh,
year.
that's fun.
Uh, I'm also a ski school instructor,
Okay.
snow sports
Uh
instructor,
huh.
snowboarding. Anyway,
I've
um,
never snowboarded in my life. I've never skied.
really,
Yeah. My wife keeps on saying we should go skiing. I think the kids would love skiing. And I'm like, I would probably kill myself skiing. I'm, like in my late 20s, I got back into skateboarding, you know,
hmm
and within 2 weeks, after just learning to drop into a bowl, I broke my ankle and I got the yips, and I've never been on a skateboard since, you know? And so
yeah.
the fear that comes from being a 42-year-old first time snowboarder or skier, no, I I don't have any interest. I mean, I would
Well,
love to be able to do it, but man, like, yeah.
well, I treat my my 9-year-olds very differently than I treat like my 40-year-old lessons.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, typically a successful lesson can look very different at the end.
Yeah.
If it's 40 and you didn't fall, that's a successful
Right.
lesson. You know what I mean? If you're like 9 and you're like, shredding top to bottom on black diamonds,
Yeah.
then that's successful as well. But yeah, no, that's understandable. Um, yeah,
Okay. So here.
yeah, so that's sort of the industry. I mean, we have some like there's cinematographers. It's I think it's interesting because like for me, like I was in my mind's eye, I'm like I need to look for work in metropolitan
Yeah.
areas because I was still in San Francisco working with agencies, and then seeing a lot of like tech brands around
Hmm.
me that there's like a direct
Yeah.
link there, mentally even to understand that there's work around, and then so when I moved up here, I'm like, well, that's what the work is, so it's not here, you know what I mean? But lately it's been, as I've been doing a little bit more like this B2B work, less, and still doing the agency stuff, but trying to find more like clients and stuff, you start to realize like, well, there's actually like work anywhere,
Yeah.
and there's money anywhere, even in
How are
small
you
towns. It's not.
finding clients and stuff like that? Especially being so remote and far away from some of these big metropolitan areas. How are you getting some? How are you staying busy?
Right. So, uh, networking.
Yeah.
Uh, and sometimes it's sort of like, you can't really see where the networking pays off. Um, like even I think I had my cousin's wedding in
Mm-hmm.
LA like a couple months ago, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go visit some LA friends, from camp or wherever. And then I hit up PJ as well, and he was like, oh, we're having a little meetup or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go hit up as many studios that I can, do like a tour, uh, you know, put my intention out
Yeah.
there, just work, and I wasn't specifically like in a real specific need for work at the moment, but I was like, well, this is an opportunity. I'm going to be in the LA area, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I stayed with my sister. She lives down there, and tried to, like, meet up with as many people, just be present, you know what I mean? And it's interesting, what I'm saying is, like, I've done this enough times where it seems like I put my energy out
Mm-hmm.
there and it comes back. It reciprocates, never in the way that's planned, And this time around, it was like a week later, my sister was like, "Oh, hey, you know what? Like, I was talking to my friend, and I think he does what you do." You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? So it's like, and sure enough, got like some work at a new agency
That's
or
cool.
whatever. And so it's like never really how you ever plan to do it. And sometimes, you know, the the degrees of separation thing, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like the work is right next to you. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're just not talking to the right
Yeah.
person. You know what I mean? But also, especially for what we do, a lot of times, that I'm finding, especially now, trying to like divert away from like agency work and more like finding my own clients and learning how to be more entrepreneurial
Yeah.
and stuff. A lot of times it is about like creating the
Mm-hmm.
work, and for that you have to be even more like putting your energy out there that everybody around you can be
Mm-hmm.
thriving with your services.
And
You know,
is the majority of work that you're doing, are you working for studios or are you doing B2B?
right now it's 50-50
Mm-hmm.
probably, but I did just land like a pretty big, sizable project that should have a lot of residuals as
Nice.
well, which feels really good.
If you
And
need
it's
some
not even like
help,
flash,
hit me up.
right? I mean, dude, yeah, the way that this first one is going, I'm
Yeah.
like, shit, with the residuals, all of a sudden, if they shoot me like tenfold or
Yeah.
something, I'll be like, all right, where's my small team? Uh, but yeah, and that one as well like came out of the most random freaking
Mm-hmm.
place, but it's not like during that time I had been kind of like, I'm always trying to kind
You
of,
just hustling
you
at
said
all
you know
times,
that,
right?
yeah. A little
Yeah.
bit, yeah, but it's, it's like hustling isn't like, um it's not like car
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
salesman. It's more of like I just love doing what I
Mm-hmm.
do, and what I do helps people,
Yeah.
and the people that understand what the value of that help is, those are the ones that you need to like talk with, you know what I mean, and then and figure it out from there. Um,
I got one last thing that I want to tell you. I don't know if you have to go. We're at an hour right now, but I would,
hmm.
if you've got time, I would love to talk about Burning Man. Because you, that's why I said I don't
All
know if
right,
you've got time.
all right, I got another
So,
two
okay,
hours.
cool.
I'm just
Tell
kidding.
me.
Uh,
Okay, you said if you want to go on for a while, let's talk Burning Man. So tell me why. Let's hear it.
it's a lot to
Mm-hmm.
unwrap, for me, especially
Uh huh.
personally.
I've
Um,
never been.
right,
I
and mainly to me, it's about
understand like, but it's probably like camp. Like you don't know how cool it is until you go. You know.
right, and then also imagine camp was on. Imagine camp advertisements were like in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And then so it's like your grandma's telling you like, "Hey, have you heard about
Uh
camp?"
huh.
You know what I mean? And you're like, "Oh, you definitely don't know." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like that's a little bit of like, and I'm not trying to, do some weird like uh It's a little bit weird because I remember coming back from Burning Man the first
Mm-hmm.
time, and the second time I went to buy a Burning Man ticket in Berkeley at the hat
Mm-hmm.
store, I remember seeing this shirt, and it said, "No one cares what happened at Burning Man."
Uh-huh.
It was like a dot dot dot. No one cares what happened at
Uh-huh.
Burning Man, and it was like, oh yeah, probably like the past year of my life after the first time going, I was like, I've probably been talking about this too much. So it's hard not to share the experience, especially because it's so
Yeah.
unique. But also to those that have been involved, it's very understandable why you would want to
Yeah.
share it,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so yeah, without coming off too cringe, anybody that does not give two shits about Burning Man should probably sign off the podcast
Right.
now. But yeah, let's get into it. Yeah, I grew up in San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco, Bay Area. I actually immigrated from Russia.
Really?
My parents,
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
я говорю по-русски очень
Oh,
хорошо.
snap.
Mhm. Yeah, lost the accent, but still got
How old were
the
you when you moved here?
6.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
but yeah, for better or worse, my folks left Russia on account of being refugees
Sh-
in an anti-Semitic state.
sure. Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
and so anyway, ended up in San Francisco. Did the immigrant thing, whatever. At one point, I had an ex-girlfriend that was like, "I went to this cool thing. You should check it out. It totally embodied you." And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, you know so much about me,
Uh-huh.
But sure enough, I went and got a ticket for the next year. And when I went, I was like, holy shit, she was kind of
Yeah.
right. And it was weird because I was like this like punk kid who like was so like I was like kind of like my way or highway a
Sure.
little
Yeah.
bit, and I was like doing a lot of like I was drawing and like doing all sorts of different art
Mm-hmm.
mediums since like very little kid,
Yeah.
Uh, but I was probably a little bit like up on my high horse in terms of what art was, and it
Sure.
was weird
You
because
were
I
very
was I always felt
pretentious at the time. We all were when we were
uh,
younger.
right a little bit, but it almost felt like what was hard was when people were like, "Oh, you draw so well." When they looked through my sketchbooks, it almost felt slightly
Uh-huh.
insulting because I'm like, well, while you were like doing your math homework, I was doing nothing
Right.
but drawing. It took,
I don't
it
know
took really
math.
no, it took no, but it felt offensive because it took so much time and dedication to get to where I
Right.
was. It felt discarded if people said that like it was just
Right,
talent.
right,
You
right,
know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so that was kind of interesting. But anyway, when I went to Burning Man, it felt like I was like, holy shit, here's like a bunch of like weirdos here. Everybody can do anything. I was like, I consider myself like this weirdo punk kid with spiky hair or something, and like, you know, I was like, okay, I want to go for the art.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this art is amazing. But right away, I was like, the thing that is way more amazing than the art is the freedom here. It really felt like this like idealistic, like kind of like epitome of like the American dream a little
Okay.
bit. In terms of like, you can do what you want in this country. Why wouldn't you just go like shout on the corner of a street, like some weird
Okay.
obscenities and like dress up in a clown suit or
Right.
something? Uh, but anyway, so it's weird because it's like, my punk rock
Uh-huh.
nature. Um, I think there's something really special here because in other countries, not only would you not do that, you're not allowed
Yeah,
to do
yeah, yeah.
that. You know what I mean? Whatever. So that's kind of interesting. Um, but yeah, so I started going, and it was really hard to like not go.
Yeah.
I started building out like a camp. We had built like domes, these big domes. You could,
How much space do they give you with it? Because there's a lot of people there now, right? Like 40,000 people or something.
the first year I went, there was 35,000. This last year, there's like 80 to
That
90,000.
is insane. That is so crazy. Has
So think about,
has the culture of Burning Man changed since then?
well, I think the culture changed in general.
Yeah.
Uh, but there was something interesting that happened was the invention of smartphones with cameras.
Ah, okay.
Because there was like a time when in like the first few times that I went where I remember even like uh it's supposed to be like a
Right.
disassociation, a little bit of like how far can we go uh completely disregarding
Mm-hmm.
society, like default world. There's a lot of tropes in the
Sure.
culture, and like this what we're in right now, this is called default
Okay.
world, and there is called home,
Okay.
and this is default world. Um and like so if you think about that, that also like kind of
Sure.
points to
My default world is Disney World or any Disney, park. But
well,
sure, yeah.
so,
Or
but
no,
that might
sorry.
be like what
Home
makes it
for me
home.
is Disney. Yeah,
Right,
this is
right.
default world. I
So,
get
but
it.
like if you're given like an opportunity to have your pure joy and happiness, you might call that
Yeah.
home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, like, honestly, like it's a very common trope that people say like, oh, it's just Disneyland for adults.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah, for
mean?
sure.
There's the weird stuff that you're not going to get at
Right.
Disneyland. Um, but uh, but yeah, with like initially it was, I don't know how deep I should go with
Yeah.
this. We could go real deep. So Burning Man kind of started out of like the San Francisco Cacophony
Mhm.
Society. It's like way back when. Um, it was like people that were involved with that were like Chuck
Yeah.
Palahniuk, like writing like club
Yeah.
and stuff. That was like direct inspirations in terms of having secret societies where you're able to like kind of uh, push the human experience to the to its farthest points in a way, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Have
yeah, I
Have
think the
you read what is it? It's a Chuck Palahniuk book. Um Dang it. It's about him growing up in Portland. And it's absolute. I read it when I first moved to Portland and it was absolutely fantastic. Anyway, go on.
yeah, Portland's kind of like San
Mhm.
Francisco, but on river time.
On River.
I don't
Okay.
know. They say river time. I don't know. I always think that it's like, oh, we're down by the river, we're just
Uh-huh.
chilling. Um, in terms of like San Francisco is like this high pace, like entrepreneurial mindset. Like, how do we get the weirdest shit out into the world the fastest
Yeah.
possible way? Portland's there with the same weird energy, but they're just chilling.
Mhm.
You so that's how I envision the two. Um, but also, I feel like the farther north you go, the more chill people are.
Uh-huh.
Probably like the snow and everything. Um,
So Burning Man,
but
back to Burning Man.
but anyway, yeah, back to Burning Man. Yeah, so like the people responsible for like creating it have like had that idea of like just
Mhm.
do whatever the fuck, do the craziest shit possible, and so you end up like with a lot of art,
Yeah.
a lot of a lot of
Thank you, Jen.
technology. And
Yes.
so to me it was really inspiring. Like when I first went, I was like, holy shit, always loved
Yeah.
tech, I always loved art, and I was like, this is art at a different scale, and it like doesn't even look like there's any rhyme or reason
Yeah.
behind it, or even like any like real investment, you know what I mean, like in terms of like rational investment,
Yeah.
right? It's not like they're sponsored things. And so that's one of the principles of Burning Man is like there's not consumerism. I mean, let's say this podcast doesn't make money, so I'm able to talk
Sure.
about it. But there's a lot of like tropes like that, and like even like, um, oh, I remember I was gonna say a story. Like, my second year, I met this couple, and we were sitting at like an art piece, like waiting for a dust storm to
Uh-huh.
pass, and like somebody was like, you know what time it is? And these two people were like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. Like literally didn't want to know the time because it's like, it's time for
Right.
disassociation. But anyway, so you were asking whether Burning Man has changed, and it's like, well, of course it's changed because culture has
Yeah.
changed. You can't, everybody knows what time it is
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
but also back then it was like really frowned upon to take photos um, at the
yeah.
event. um, and especially without consent. And realistically, in the default world, it's actually like the same rules
Sure.
apply. You shouldn't be taking photos without consent, right? You can't use it for commercial purposes, whatever. But just in general, it's a good thing to ask people, especially if they're running around the desert naked, if it's okay to take their
Right.
picture, you know. But as pictures came out, as the world kind of understood what it is, um, it's kind of interesting because I think people started taking more of those pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Because back then, if you saw some CEO running around butt ass naked, he might get
Yeah.
fired. But I mean, nowadays, if you see some CEO running around butt naked
At Burning
at
Man.
he might get
Right.
hired. So see like the difference, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's like that explains a lot of like underlying kind of
Mm-hmm.
changes at Burning Man, but it's kind of for better or worse. And I'll just kind of like say my take on like the popular kind of
Mm-hmm.
consensus, because some people that have been going for a long time say like, oh, it's worse and worse every
Sure.
year. It's like, well, you missed the good
Mm-hmm.
times, you know what I mean? Because before phones, before as many people, before as many
Sure.
spectators. It should be more like technically you're a participant because the event doesn't really buy you anything, it just gives you access,
Mm-hmm.
So everything inside is not really paid for. It's just the ticket and like the event pass. So it's like I can't MoGraph you. You guys book sessions. You might be like, oh, this person's gonna bring something. We're gonna fund it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? At Burning, there's nothing like that. There's like a small fund for like huge projects, but even that doesn't cover very much at all. So all the art you see there is literally funded by the
Yeah.
people and the camps themselves. Um, so yeah, so it's interesting
Do you
that
do you have you done any art installations or MoGraph work or anything specifically related to Burning Man?
well, I'm glad you asked.
That's yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, no, so I'd been going for a while, and then I went to school for motion
yeah. Okay.
graphics. Did like a 2 year program, kind of like accelerated like a 4 year program into like a 2 year
Cool. Where
crunch.
was that at?
Um,
If you don't mind me asking.
yeah, in Emeryville, it was called Expression
Rad.
College
Okay.
for
Cool.
designers. Uh, and the motion graphics program no longer
Oh.
exists. It got bought by another
All
school,
right.
but anyway, neither here nor there. When I was going to school there, I had met my friend Thomas Moore. He goes by Cyclo. I am Cyclo
Mm-hmm.
online. And he had just started at the school. Actually, we have this connection. I heard because we didn't have a very big class, but from the program director, we were like, "Oh, there's this guy coming in, and he's skipping some of these early classes because he already knows Cinema
Mm-hmm.
4D, so he's gonna jump in right in with us. He'll be a perfect fit." And we were all like, "Okay, this is interesting." We had like maybe like 10-person class, so it's like, "Okay, we're having an
Uh-huh.
11." And then I go to my internship at Swordfish because I was interning there at the time when I was going to
Uh-huh.
school, and Matt was like, "Oh, hey, we have a new intern, and you still get first priority on seating, but we got a new intern, so you guys can vibe and chill and stuff." And he was like, "And I think he goes to your school." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And then I meet him, and he was like, "Hey, I'm Thomas," and I was like,
Ah,
"Oh, you're the guy that's about to start
that's
classes."
funny.
Anyway, we kicked it off. Like he's super rad dude, and I was like, "Dude, you should come to Burning Man with me." And he took him, and he was like pretty blown away. He loves like electronic music, which over time as I've been going, I'd become a lot more open-minded. From my like punk rock angst
Sure.
teen days and stuff. But so he was super stoked, and then the next year he's like, "Hey, I have a friend that also goes, and he's part of like I think a pretty big deal, like a pretty big camp." And I was like, oh, "Okay, let's chat." And then like so it turned out that they have this whole village, and they were like hard. Some of the camps in that village were like hardcore builders, and I was like, holy shit! I was like, okay, yeah, let's definitely join up with these guys, and we could learn a lot. And so that year, in preparation for Burning Man, we learned how to laser cut. We learned how to CNC in order to build our art project, because we were told we had like this art garden
Okay.
that we outside of our theme camp that we could like install an installation. And I've done like small projects, and I've done like kind of like internal camp projects. Like one time we built we were like, we have all this wood, everybody's building shit, let's build something cool. And somebody was like, oh, I'm building a ladder ball. I brought, I was like, okay, the ladder ball is like the game with the balls and the
Oh,
string.
right. Yeah.
And you throw it at the
Yeah.
ladder, and they were like building it, and the like the horizontal
Mm-hmm.
pieces were still stuck out and not cut. And I was like, stop here, we just invented something.
Yeah.
We're doing ladder ball tic-tac-toe. And it was so fun, and people came and played our ladder ball tic-tac-toe. But anyway, that felt very small time, and we were there to like check out this big art and just party our asses off. But this year with Thomas, like we had joined up with this Camp Dustfish. They had been going like 20 plus years or something, and they had built out a whole village. They had a skate camp. They bring like a skate park. They had sextant. They bring like this giant 3-story climbable like dome with this attached lookout up top with a giant flamethrower above that. And then from the top, you could zip line down in the camp. And then out front of that, they had 2 giant Tesla coils that connected electricity in the center. They're like 3 stories tall. And anyway, so that was insane. And we were like, wow, these guys are pushing so hard. We have to do something cool. We designed these 3 crystals in Cinema 4D, and we were like, all right, let's bring these to life. Easier said than done. We designed them at 7 feet tall, and so we like right away started learning how to laser cut in order to kind of graduate. There's like a tech shop in San Francisco, and you could like take classes, and then you get to use the machines, and you kind of have this like graduation pattern. You learn the lasers, then you kind of do the CNC workshop, and then you can use the CNC machines. So we built these crystals to specs. Yeah, you could show them. I sent you some of the pictures.
Yeah, it was on Discord. Hold on. The crystals. Was it the chromoforms?
Oh no, the images afterwards.
Oh, cool. Yeah. What's going to be the best way to do this? Nope, that's not it. Okay, keep talking. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. No worries. Yeah, so we built those crystals, and that was awesome. And we actually like ended up doing kind of like a festival tour with them for that following year. And even though it was like me and my brother, or me and Thomas that designed them, real quick we realized like, holy shit, this is a big undertaking just to build these things. So we tapped on some people.
I'm showing the right thing, right?
Yeah. So those are the crystals.
Yeah, it's super cool.
So that's the whole team. That's saying is like, if you build it, they will come. That's a common trope. So we design these things in the computer, and then we're like, holy shit, this is a lot of work. We need to gather up a camp to help us with this thing. And then we end up. That was like at a tech conference. So if you look at that picture, there's our crystals on playa there. There's the skate park in the background on the right there.
Oh yeah.
And then that's the sextant tower there with a big poofer on the left. And then there's the zip line that goes into the back of the camp there.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah, and then there's a giant jack there, inflatable. So that one, I'd worked alongside with this artist, and that inflatable jack, like people would just push it along the desert.
Oh, it's inflatable. It's not a giant. Okay, I thought it was metal. It's
right,
chrome colored, but that's funny. Right. That's really funny.
Yeah. So yeah, it's super rad. That artist, he's chromoforms online. If you want, that's my crystal. It's cool, sweet. It'll be a good segue. Check out his thing, chromoforms. Because later, Burning Man is like this party where you're like trying to leave and like somebody keeps
Uh-huh.
pulling at your
Sorry
sleeve.
about the echoing. I think it was because I my audio was messed up on there. I was pulling audio from my system as well as, yeah. Sorry.
Hallucination.
Yeah. It's just all a part of the Burning Man experience.
Right, we just dropped acid a moment ago. um, but yeah, so chromoforms. So interesting story with him. Like, so we'd done the crystals, we made the rounds. For me personally, I was like, after school, I was like, trying to push my freelance career, trying to like do more with motion graphics. Every year as Burning Man comes up, I'm like, all right, I guess we're doing
Mm-hmm.
this thing. Let's bring the crystals, you know. And my brother is in love with it, and like, it's sort of like the people that I met along the way. It sort of becomes like a family
Yeah.
reunion,
It's like camp.
because it's like,
That,
yeah, I end up sometimes some of those people I only see like once a year. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And it's at like most magical
Yeah.
place, so it's like they're kind of gonna be like your best friends because you have no bad
Yep.
times. You know what I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
mean?
And that's what I tell my wife all the
um,
time. It's like I don't have any friends who live within, 30 at least 30 miles of me, and that's only Dave. And then after that it's probably like 200 miles, is my next friend.
right, and it's crazy that some of these camps are able to like collaborate in such massive ways,
Seriously.
even though they're like spread out. Like, I mean, there's some like Florida camps that bring the craziest shit, and I'm like,
Yeah.
how? I mean, like, some of them like they'll like do storage in Reno for certain
Right.
projects or whatever, but yeah, so I think, was it like 4 years
Mhm.
ago now? I had like kind of like a life scenario where I was like, I drink too much alcohol. I'm gonna go sober. Um, and anyway, I was like, yeah, when summer comes around, I'm probably not gonna make it to Burning Man this year.
Mhm.
I'm trying to like really preserve my sobriety. And sure enough, Burning Man comes around, and somebody hits me up, and it's my buddy David, and he's like, "Hey, you've worked on my art car before. I need you to help me out, make some animations in the eyes of this like giant skull that rides on the back of like a stretched limo that's turned into like a steampunk
Rad.
train, with like two stripper poles on it
Okay.
with like LEDs. Anyways, the skull has like animatronics. It opens its
Uh-huh.
mouth. It has like wings, and like the wings fold
Did you
up.
send me a link
And
of this? It's okay. No.
mm,
Let's keep going. Yeah.
anyway, oh, I should have,
It's
I should
okay.
have. His piece is the most badass. But anyway, so oh yeah, the mouth opens, smoke comes out,
That's
lasers
cool.
shoot out. It's rad, super steampunk. But he hit me up. He was like, I need more animations. I have a Burning Man ticket for you. Come to Burning Man. I told myself I'm not gonna
Mhm.
go, but all right, you're twisting my arm,
Mhm.
And like right away in my head, I'm like, I'm gonna do this only if I push myself in the way that I've been inspired so much over the years. And the biggest inspiration for me was like these large scale art pieces, like some projects that I've had the opportunity to be a part of, the crystals that I've had the opportunity to like lead,
Mhm.
Uh, but it's always been like at the forefront of the inspiration in terms of like things that are just larger than life that you're just like, what
I
the
love
fuck,
that.
you
I
know?
absolutely love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I made him a pack of visuals. I helped them build the skate park. That was the camp that he's in. And I was pretty much like right after that, the first couple of days, I was like, cool, peace. And I built myself. So I have a one
Yeah.
wheel. So I have my one wheel electric skate
Mhm.
park, skateboard, and then I built myself like this little trailer, and I put my projector on it, and a laptop, and a propane tank, and a little propane inverter.
Okay.
And so this whole cart I haul on my one wheel, and then I pull up to a large scale art piece, and I set up the projection mapping,
Mhm.
and I just animate, and I just sit there and animate to like my heart's content.
Okay.
And then like in 4 hours or something, I'm like, packing
Okay,
up
so the
because
propane
it
is for
went.
like electricity and stuff. Not I was
Yeah, yeah.
thinking propane like you're going to start shooting flames into the, into the crowd and stuff like that. No, it's for the
No, that'd be
electricity.
cool.
Gotcha.
Although,
No, that's cool.
no, I thought about that. Flame effects in general, like for projection
Yeah.
mapping, it's like you're fighting light pollution a little
Mhm.
bit, and having enough experience. Like I had like literally like a month to kind of plan this
Yeah.
project. That was like 4 years ago now, and I was like, I'm gonna do this thing because I want to go because it's in my heart. I had this sort of like identity crisis through sobriety of like all these things that I've been in love with, like skateboarding, punk rock, like festivals, raves. Somehow they've always been like synonymous with like drugs
Yeah,
and
for sure.
alcohol. And then I had this sort of like, if I take away that, does that mean I take away the other things?
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's entering sobriety. It felt like that's what I was gonna have to do. But then shortly into it, I was like, actually, I don't have to. Like I love. In fact, I fell in love with these things. Um,
Because of
I
what they
began
were
to.
and what they stood for and stuff.
Right, and then somehow
Yeah.
those other things were kind of parallel and synonymous, and they built those relationships in my brain that way. But really, like you know, the content is way more inspiring than the
Yeah.
substances or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, anyway, so did it really for me. I'm like, okay, I'm an animator. I'm most inspired by large scale sculptures at Burning Man. I'm gonna bring animation to the desert. And this is the way that I know how. I'd done some projection mapping in like SF kind of like rave scene like early
Mhm.
on as well. And so I was like, I'm gonna make a project that's just for me, and that's to me sort of like the epitome of Burning Man. Uh, in a way something that's like not specifically said in the principles because there is like principles,
Mhm.
but I think it's a working project, like as a whole. If everybody brings their like favorite thing,
Mhm.
and like if you were to go and just bring your favorite thing to the desert for a
Mhm.
week to entertain yourself, if nobody was there, what would be that thing? You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Now 80,000 people do that at the same
Yeah.
time and everybody shares all their
Yeah.
thing. You know what I mean? All their things. So like that's where like I think the magic is. So for me, I was like, yeah, like animation is the thing I love. Some people might get a kick out of it, but I'm just gonna do these like they're like guerrilla
Mhm.
collaborations, like secret
Yeah.
collaborations. Because Burning Man's all about gifting as well, and my biggest gift that year was making a video of the projection mapping and then sending it to the sculpture
Oh,
artists
that's cool.
after. Because like it's something that like so many times you pass by a sculpture, the artist isn't there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're somewhere else or whatever. And for me, when I'd be sitting there, sometimes I'd draw a crowd. Sometimes I'm like in the middle of nowhere because I'm like, this is the piece that I want to
Yeah.
project onto. Like there might be like three people that pass by, but I'm like, this is just for me, and like I'm gonna shoot a cool
Yeah.
video out of it
Did anyone ever
afterwards.
get upset that you were like projecting your art onto their art?
I would love for that to happen. Uh, I would love to have that conversation. That's a good high level experience to have a conversation like
Yeah.
that, because you're starting to talk about like, well, what is Burning Man,
Right.
but no, I think like most people kind of like understand the whole city as like a big collaborative
Mhm.
project. You know what I mean? And in a way, there's like a lot of like lessons back into like default world from experiencing Burning Man. Like a lot of people will like rant and rave about it, I think, because it affects them so much because it's such a unique experience. But also like there's so many lessons I think back into like regular world,
Yeah.
in terms of like trying to push creativity, trying to like not be so bound by like uh,
Mhm.
precedents and rules and like thinking outside the box and stuff. Um,
That's cool.
Sorry, I get excited and I go on
No,
tangents.
it's
I'm
all
like, there
right.
was a point.
Like I get it. I mean, it's
Like,
a big it sounds like a huge gathering of artists and open-minded, yeah.
yeah. So that year, I went out with the projector and I was like, all right, I'm gonna hit up these pieces. I did a projection on the most badass piece that I saw. I didn't know whether this thing was gonna work,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, because I was like, I loaded the shit up onto a cart to know that it practically
Right.
rolled, and I know how to projection map, but I haven't dealt with like this system out
Yeah.
there. There were certain things I trimmed my nails all the way down, and I taped off the keyboard on my little MacBook
Uh-huh.
Mini. I got a $200 like MacBook, sorry, not MacBook Mini, iPad or MacBook
Yeah.
Air from like 2014 or
Uh-huh.
something. I'm like, typically, if you bring something to Burning Man, you want to be okay to part with it,
Right, because it's gonna get lots of like
right? It can get
dust and
destroyed
dirt
or
and
damaged or
yeah.
something, and especially computer kind of
Yeah.
components and stuff, electronics. But knowing enough, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do my best. I kind of cellophane taped off the keyboard. I knew that, that was like the intake for the
Yeah.
fan, and I trimmed my fingernails so I wouldn't break through
Yeah. That's
it.
funny.
um, but so so I got prepped and I went and toured like the first thing that I saw when I got there that year was like this giant bust of a woman, and I was like, this is amazing and inspiring. This is exactly the thing that I'm looking for to project
Mm-hmm.
onto. But I was like, this is intimidating as fuck, and it's like right in the middle of everything, in terms of like heavily trafficked, and 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 I was like, all right, I'll save this for the end. Did a few pieces throughout the week, and on the very last day, I came to that piece and did that piece, and I was like super stoked on it. Came back, posted the video, and then my partner at the time, my girlfriend, uh, was like, "Oh, you projected on your friend's piece." I was like, "Oh, wait,
Uh-huh.
what?" I didn't even realize it was my buddy's
Oh, that's
piece.
funny.
Uh, yeah, and so the next year we planned to
That's
collaborate.
cool.
So yeah, so the next year his girlfriend and her friend were like duo DJ pair, and we planned this like midnight to sunrise set where I did projections on one of his new
Mm-hmm.
pieces, and then they like a DJ event underneath, and and like it was such a fucking epic night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some people rolled through. We had like cool crowds from different friend groups or whatever. Um, but the like the lesson there, you know, where I was saying, where it's like sometimes there's like weird lessons that you get back in the default world is like you gotta just fucking do
Yeah.
it. You know, sometimes it's like asking for permission is just like you just get
Yeah.
nowhere, and it's like when you have your visions, you can't even relay them in the right
Yeah.
way to get people to understand them. You know, so it's like it's good to just go
Has
for it.
any of
You
the
know.
work that you've done translated into, uh what's it called? Non-default world or whatever? Fake world?
Well, for default
Yeah,
world, yeah.
default world.
Yeah, no,
Has it
it's
has
funny.
someone ever like hit you up? They're like, "Hey, I love the stuff that you did at Burning Man. Like, let's do some projection mapping. I've got a project that's going on," or something like that. You know?
Right. So that did not happen for a long time because I was very self-conscious to show anything that I did out
Okay.
there. Because there were like these old school principles that I was saying, like the Fight Club
Yeah.
thing. You know what I mean? You don't talk about the
Yeah.
thing. But I'm here on the podcast, like doing a deep
Yeah.
dive because like the cat's been out
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
bag. You know, even back then there was like a Malcolm in the Middle episode about Burning Man, and then the next year there was like a Simpsons
Yeah.
episode about Burning Man, and the next year the South Park episode, and you could tell this thing was like creeping into the
Yeah.
like uh
The
the
zeitgeist.
culture, the
Yeah.
zeitgeist. It's so trippy to me because like that zeitgeist had like an influence that I think like a lot of people don't even recognize, um, to art, technology, and
Mm-hmm.
culture. Like technology, like there's so many times where I see something at Burning Man, and then the next year I see that as an as like a real
Mm-hmm.
product. You know what I mean? And then if you follow the path, the breadcrumb, you're like, oh wait, this random team of like drone engineers built this LED animation in the air at Burning Man, and it seemed like this weird niche thing. And then
Now
now
it's.
there's companies
Yep.
doing it, right? And then you're like, oh wait, that's literally the group that did
Yeah.
that at Burning Man here. And furthermore, they did it in the hardest possible place
Yeah.
on earth to. So now they literally like R and D'd their product, you know,
Yeah.
and they could do it any, you know what I mean? And like, so I've seen that time and again happen, you know what I mean? Whether it's with tech, whether it's like with art, kind of like cultural tropes
Yeah.
and stuff too, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think there's like a lot of creativity that stems from that place. And it's weird. It's weird. It's still weird to
Yeah.
talk about it. But anyways, so a few years ago when I came back and I had like my kind of like that sobriety
Mm-hmm.
moment and like the, I was like, okay, I want to like really push my art, you know, in this
Mm-hmm.
place that I've always felt like I participated, but not at this level that I've truly admired the people whose creations are there,
Yeah.
you know. I'm like, I want to be a little closer to that. And so the projection mapping came out of that. And then this last year, I was like, you know what? I've been like having so much of this stuff and the cat's out of the bag and like I like that's the content that I like to create. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And so I started and I've always been on one hand the like don't talk about Fight Club
Right.
thing. But on the other side, I didn't really want to ever like convolute my brand, you know, my designer brand
Mm-hmm.
to Burning Man because not everybody's seen it the same. To this day, not everybody is like excited about Burning Man, you
Yeah.
know. So it's like you don't really want to put that on your like professional facade, you know what I
Sure.
mean? Uh, so coming back this year, I started Playa Projections, and the Playa is a geographic location
Mm-hmm.
term. It's like a desert basin of a dried out lake
Okay.
bed. So that's what they call the desert floor there, the Playa, as the location reference. So Playa Projections came out of that. And so that's the Instagram. So go follow me on Playa
Yeah.
Projections Instagram.
We need to
Um,
get you a
have
Playa Projections MoGraph account. Just saying.
yeah, no. And I went and it's funny with the name. I was like, I need to just put this out there so many times. And like, it was an opportunity as well for me. Like, I love tinkering, but then I also kind of love like
Mm-hmm.
perfectionism. And then, so like, there's this weird thing with work where sometimes like I just have to call it
Yeah.
done when even I don't call it
Yep.
done. You know what I mean? And I think that's just kind of any artist, you know, it has been there. But with Playa Projections, because I made it kind of like its own identity, I'm like, okay, this is going to give me the freedom to not care as
Yeah.
much. You know what I mean? Even like on my branding thing. Here, pull it up. Pull up the Instagram. I think it was the link for Ply Projections because this will actually go into what you were asking about. Has this bled into like regular world
Yeah.
stuff?
Hold on one
Um,
second. Okay, so I gotta make sure that we don't hear double of you. Let's see. Let's go to nope, not Discord. Bear with me. Go here. All right.
oh yeah,
Don't
yeah,
say
yeah,
anything yet.
yeah.
Hold on. I need to make sure that my where is it? Sorry. Video screen overlay, max screen capture muted. There we go. All right. I think we're good now. Chat, let us know if
Can you hear me,
yeah,
chat?
if you see doubles or if you hear doubles. So,
I don't know. I'm always doubles.
yeah.
But yeah, at the bottom there, you can check out. Maybe go to the bottom. There's the woman bust that I was talking about earlier.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, so click that. You could see the
Oh, that's rad,
so,
dude.
like, yeah. So this is what I was saying is like put all this stuff in a I just put all this stuff in, you know, on my cart, and then I go there, and I'm like, cool, I have my equipment. Now what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was sort of chasing low hanging fruit. You know, like for so many people were like, this is amazing, oh my gosh, but to any of us, we're
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
oh, cool, he
this is
put a
super basic. Yeah.
fracture. Right, it's a fracture
With
object, and
yeah.
I always love Muranoe, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But I did do some things, like I took the picture here, and then I literally just did an outline in Illustrator or Cinema
Ah.
4D, I think, and I just extruded
Yeah.
it. So I have a slight piece of geometry, and then it's not this organic form, it's just an extruded 2D
Yeah.
outline. You know what I mean? But now when you make it fracture, it actually it looks convincing
Yeah.
enough. And this was rendered in
Standard, right?
viewport
Yeah.
render.
I'll tell you,
Viewport.
like, and you know, uh, going back to the viewport rendering stuff, it's like the amount of times that I go back to standard 100% luminant, no reflections and whatever. And I use that all the time because sometimes it's faster to do it that way and looks just as good as going through a GPU renderer. Like, especially when you want perfectly flat 100% luminant materials and everything, there's no reason.
Yeah, no, it's funny. By the time, yeah, I mean, that's our
Yeah.
job, right? We just do the thing as fast as we can. You were talking about the Octane Redshift thing. I just recently did a project where it was like, it's kind of like a tech
Mm-hmm.
thing. So they had a person standing in a room and giant LED displays, and there was like content playing on the LEDs,
Yeah.
right? It was sort of like a VFX comp in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. But the room was built out in 3D, and then also the content for the LEDs within the room was a video
Mm-hmm.
that was playing, that was like projected within the 3D scene. And it's funny because it's like, I'm like, well, the visuals like are in the 3D
Uh-huh.
scene, and visuals are typically like what's fast and quick and like, easy to do abstract stuff. I was like, that's Octane.
Yeah.
So I made the content for the screen inside in Octane just because I'm like, well, this is obviously going to be like easiest in
Yeah.
Octane. But then the room
Was
itself, when it
just,
required kind of like strategic, was Redshift because it was like certain specific like
yeah,
nuances of like little tags where I was like,
that's funny.
there's going to be little tweaks where Octane can kind of put me in a pinch. I feel like when I have detailed scenes, that's when I might like
Yeah, for sure.
prefer uh, Redshift versus if I have like something pretty simple, but it needs to look as best as it
Yeah.
possibly can with the least amount of clicks, then it's like for sure
Yeah.
Octane.
Yeah. Cool, dude.
But yeah, yeah. Anyway, pull that thing
Sure.
up just while to complete the
Yeah.
story. The first post on the Instagram there was JC from camp.
Uh-huh.
He had approached me and he was like, "Oh, I'm doing a thing on a hotel." He was like, "And I know you've been, in the Burning Man space doing a lot of like visuals and stuff. Do you want to help out? I have like a section that needs animation." So I didn't do the projection mapping here,
Mm-hmm.
but I did some of the animation,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know if he specifically saw I was pushing out content on Instagram with Playa
Uh-huh.
projections. But sure enough, over the 3 years of chatting with him at camp and stuff, like, he's like, "Oh, you're probably the guy that has some experience with this and understand that world a
Yeah.
little bit." You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So he reached out to me. So, that's also what I was saying is like, I literally was almost not about to make Playa Projections as its own entity
Yeah.
this year, and then I should just do it. If you like, yeah, and like, and sure enough, he hit me up, and I'm like, I guess you put your energy out there, and it'll receive some hits. If you look at the logo, I have the logo on the other post there. I'll do a quick read. The Playa projection logo came out of a simple and clean P, then it evolved inside of another P. PP is informing clean design, but also a reminder to not take life too
Uh-huh.
seriously. So it's like little things like that. I'm like, I'm trying to make it
Yeah.
clean as a designer, but I'm like, I need to make it janky
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
Almost intentionally to give myself opportunity later to not care
Yeah.
so much. You know what I mean? And that's sort of the like epitome of Burning
Yeah.
Man and it's the epitome of this project. But yeah,
There's a
and the
time and a
time,
place for perfection, you know?
right. Right. And it's not when you brought your shit out, you created this
Uh-huh.
contraption, you like, your hands are cracking, you're like you got up to an installation and you're like, I'm so proud to show, to do this thing for myself and share with
Yeah.
people. And and then you get there and you're like, I literally did 100 steps to get here. Now I have to animate
Yeah.
it. you
Yeah.
know and so it's like that's where it's like the path of least resistance, and it's like that's why also I'm like, okay, this is literally the epitome of Burning Man project. They look very grand and
Yeah.
everything, but a lot of times like it's like up to the last minute somebody like just fixed the right duct tape or
For
paper
sure.
clip to make it work. You know what I mean? So yeah,
That's cool, dude.
in a nutshell, that's those have been my projects, and yeah, it's sort of like my passion currently. But yeah, and
Yeah.
snowboard.
Anything we should look out for in the future? Anything you're working on that you're really excited about?
Um,
Pimp out that work.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I got like right now well, Playa Projections I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
pushing, and then just a local meetup group I'm gonna be
Cool.
pushing. And yeah, I might tap you to see what how can I grow a local meetup group,
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I have like, I have ideas for probably like 20 different projects, but first I gotta get my life in order. I just had to
Yeah.
move, and after the house
Got to figure
shopping,
out how
there
to
was a
move
lot
that
of
camera from like down below to a little bit more eye level, you know?
you don't like looking up my nose?
I love it. Oh, it's funny. Um,
Cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. Might collaborate this year with some some people out at Burning Man again. I'm not sure. The ticket situation's a little weird
yeah.
this year. Um, yeah, if you thought Camp Mograph sells out fast,
you just don't
80.
you don't go to the snowboard store anymore and buy your tickets there. Is it all online, I'm assuming?
Yeah, yeah, and it's yeah. You like wait for an hour to see whether you actually got a ticket in the first 2 seconds.
Jeez. That's insane. And how many tickets do they have? Like 100,000 or something like that?
It's probably like 60 to 70 because like there is also like a decent amount of tickets that go into other. Um, there's multiple sales. There's like tiers,
Yeah.
but then there's also like camp tickets that get different sale
Uh-huh.
access, and then also uh, there's a good amount of people that work to put the thing up.
Crazy.
I mean, it's like they don't. They say it's like you're only provided a ticket, but there is a lot of
For
logistical
sure.
stuff.
Yeah. Man, I can only imagine how much work that is for that many people. Of course, having to say we don't provide your food, we don't, provide your transportation or anything. That would be a little bit easier. You know.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to water the streets
Oh, really?
to keep the dust down. You have to do all the porta potties. You have to
Oh,
get
yeah.
in and out, set up the perimeter. You have to pay all the different, like 3 or 4 different, law enforcement agencies to patrol your thing. You have to like
Really?
rent out the land from like from the natives, and yeah, like a lot of expenses just to make it happen.
Crazy.
Uh, but when you get there, you're like, wait, I have nothing.
Yeah.
And you still have to like bring all your food,
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
water, your organize
Man.
everything, pack everything
Yeah.
out.
Seems like a good place to make money. Set up a little hot dog vendor or something like that. Vegan hot dogs, of course.
You would think, but there's no consumerism, so there's literally no money. Like you're not allowed to pull out money.
Really?
Yeah, so that's the whole thing that I've been trying to kind of get across. I guess I should have
Yeah.
stated that. But it's a non-consumerist event, meaning that it shouldn't be promoted outside of the event except for through its own
Yeah.
channels. Also, you can't fly branded flags there at
Interesting.
all, and you can't sell anything. Meanwhile, they've broken like world records for like biggest hot dog giveaway. You know what I mean?
uh-huh.
Or whatever. So it's like though people
Brought to
come
you
there
by Nathan's
strapped.
Hot Dogs.
Yeah, but they don't. And sometimes it's like, on the back end, somebody might work somewhere where they're like, we have this
Yeah.
opportunity. And there's like there's going to be no mentions of the
Yeah.
brands, you know what I mean? But sometimes things end up, there's reasons for things, for certain camps having certain
Yeah.
resources, you know what I mean? People generally bring things from Default World uh, in terms of resources and assets.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and like people break records, like do all sorts of crazy shit, and yeah, it's like a gifting party, like everybody's just gifting
Yeah.
shit. It's sort of like, imagine like if everybody met their Maslow's needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like everybody is on like god tier hierarchy mode, in terms of like when you have completed everything, what are your true
Yeah.
ambitions? And at the same time, it's the ultimate equalizer because there's no money. You literally have the same value as some, rich CEO
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like waiting for that hot dog or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, like setup, um, because of that.
Interesting.
But yeah, and you get to meet some pretty interesting people. So,
Sounds fun. We'll see. Maybe I'll make
yeah,
it out one year.
yeah, do it. Everybody tends to like call their camp like Camp Sexton,
Uh,
skate camp. So like even like coming, I think a lot of people at camp
mm-hmm.
MoGraph think that like I'm obsessed with Burning
Mm-hmm.
Man because it happens literally the
The week
week
before, yeah.
beforehand. So it's like fresh on my mind, and like it's hard to talk about anything else in that
Mm-hmm.
moment. You know what I mean?
Did you do a camp
But yeah,
onesie? Or is that only a Camp MoGraph specific thing?
like that'd be too ordinary as like onesies, you know. Uh, but uh, but no, there's like one camp I remember. I got a chuckle. It was called Camp.
Okay. That's funny.
but uh, but yeah, even like hearing like Camp MoGraph when it first like came
Mm-hmm.
into existence, I was like, this has
That's funny.
familiarity.
That's really funny. All right, Cons, where can people find you if they wanna find you online?
Hit me up. I'm around on Discord a
Yeah.
lot because I work remote and I'm just on Discord. But yeah, Instagram. Uh, Pretty much all my handles are the first four letters of my name,
Mm-hmm.
KONS, but doubled, so KKOONNSS
Okay.
.com at Gmail for Insta, Twitter, all the things. So consistency,
Rock on.
that double vision.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for everyone for joining. Make sure to follow us. Here's the consumerism part of the show, just so you're aware. Make sure to follow us on all the socials, especially YouTube and Twitch. We're doing all the live streaming there. We're continuing on with our MoGraph hangouts. For anyone who hung out with us last week, as I was modeling my PSA 10 Charizard card. It crashed and burned after like an hour and a half of me streaming. My whole computer just crapped the bed, and so we called it a night after that.
Wait, modeling a Charizard, your computer burned?
Yeah. I was so. I should not be I realized I should not be streaming OBS at the same time as I'm using my GPU on my computer. So my fault for doing that. I have figured out a workaround for that, so we're gonna deal with that this week. So maybe we'll continue on with the Charizard thing. I also had some ideas. I was chatting with Matt in the chat. I don't know if he's still here, but we were talking about CSV imports in After Effects and like creating templated Mogurt things based off of a CSV file. So maybe we'll play around with that. I don't know. But we're going to have a lot of fun. Those are Thursday nights at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. So come and hang out. We also have a ton of awesome guests coming up. We just booked Smearballs for April 1st. So that's going to be a fun show. Also, if you haven't done it already, make sure to sign up for your very own MoGraph.com account. It's a one-stop shop for everything a motion designer needs. Showcase your demo reel, projects you've worked on, post jobs, apply for jobs, sell your digital goods, find meetup groups, or start one of your own, and so much more planned. We currently have, we just hit over the 600 mark. We're at like 625 members. So we gained like 75 members just in the past week alone. Super excited about that. So we currently have over 625 members and are growing. We are an artist-first site where your work will always be yours and never be fed to the AI machine. Stop feeding Zuck's AI machine and start posting on MoGraph.com. We've got some other things coming in the next few months. Maybe I'd give it about 6 months or so before like we implement these, but it's more to it's to encourage people to post, their work here instead of Instagram, and like it'll help you, encourage other artists and promote other artists and stuff like that. So just be aware that's coming. But yeah, thanks again, everyone, for hanging out with us. We will see you next week. Thanks, everyone. We'll see ya.
Later on.
Later, yo.
It's pretty good, I guess.